Meeting to order. Dr. Deegan, would you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who's this gentleman in the corner? All right, call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Here.
Ms. Nyworth?
Here.
Dr. Bridges?
Here.
Mr. Jester? Colonel Curtis? Kelly, Ms. Edwards?
All right. Do we have any special guests or special recognitions?
We have no special guests tonight.
All right, then departmental reports, and I'm going to turn that over to you.
Okay. Under departmental reports, we have item 5A, and if the board doesn't have any questions, that's the written reports from the departments. But if the board doesn't have any questions under 5A, I'll continue to 5B. 5B is an action item. It's a proposal for use for clear or mesh backpacks for all sites beginning with the 2019-20 school year. And again, that is the next school year, not time. So if you have any questions, I'll have Mr. Hornbeck here to present. But matter of fact, I'd like Mr. Hornbeck to present,
please.
Explain the rationale.
I'm Chief Hornbeck with Lawton Public School Police Department, and we've decided on this proposal because it would help enhance security efforts throughout the district, and it would streamline check-in processes in all of our secondary locations as far as when we do the metal detector duties.
My question is, can we have our sites, you know, a lot of people buy brand new backpacks every year. Can we kind of have our sites kind of encourage them to go this way this year?
We have sites that are already taking the initiative to do that this year, and the team had talked about notifying Walmart and other departmental stores throughout the district of our proposed changes for next year, so that they'll be ready when they make their orders for backpacks. They'll have plenty of stock to accommodate the district.
We need to let the city know too, because they do that back to school bash.
Yes, ma'am.
Every year, and they have tons of backpacks, like over 100 backpacks they give away. I'd sure hate for them to have the wrong backpacks.
Correct.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great idea.
Okay, so I have several questions. I'm sorry, but
Okay, great.
okay, are we just implementing this for high schools or all secondary, or?
Our proposal is for all sites across the district. We do have sites.
Even elementary?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We do have sites currently that have this in place already.
Okay, that was question number 3. Let me go back to question number 2. I'm sorry. Okay, how difficult are these to find? Are we going to try to make them more accessible would be the second thing. Like our PTAs in some schools sell school supplies, so we need to make sure that, you know, we alert all of them.
We have locations now that already offer the backpacks. Okay. I think it's $10 charge for a clear backpack and has the school logo printed on the backpack.
Perfect.
So it's dual purpose.
Okay, so I did, and I think it was I don't know if it was MacArthur Middle School, MacArthur High School, someone sent it to me, I don't know where it was, that said they're requiring them for this year. It's not a requirement for this year, it's a recommendation, is that correct?
That's correct, it is a recommendation at this point.
Okay.
Matt Middle had sent out a requirement before this even happened.
Okay.
And then after she found out that she sent out.
So it's not a requirement there, it's a recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that straight because we will get questions.
This will make it part of policy.
Right.
The MAC is still going to require it? Did I understand MAC Middle's still going to require? No, they're not. Okay. I just wanted to.
They're just recommending it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think it's a great idea.
I do too.
Any more questions?
No?
Thank you.
Second.
It's going to be you and me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can I ask that question real quick from the attorney? I can't make an approval and I can't second an approval, right? Since I'm the acting president.
You can.
I can make a motion?
Just not
Because he's acting
president. You don't have to.
The chairman has a right to vote on motions. They can second them. They could even initiate one.
Okay. I wanted to clarify before.
We won't throw you.
Okay. I'll try to be on my toes. So.
I'm trying to keep her moving for you, Carter.
All right. So Mrs.
Nyworth?
Yes.
Made the motion, and Dr. Bridges made the second.
Yes, call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
All right. Under item 5, I lost my point already. Item 5C, We have a proposed revisions to policy BJCDR, which is Superintendent Evaluation Form, and the board recently held a special meeting where they reviewed the evaluation instrument. The adjustments are relatively minor, but the board will need to approve that unless you have any questions or additions.
Only thing I wanted to ask was, since we don't have a full board, is it still okay to go ahead since we were kind of all did this together? It'd be all right? Okay. I just
We have a
wanted to.
quorum.
As long as we have a quorum.
Yeah, and they've seen it.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, I'm sorry.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay, on item 5D, a proposed adoption of policy CHCA, and this is the policy that the board reviewed at the previous board meeting. The additions, however, are the, and this is about competitive bidding for non-regulated purchases, and just for everybody in the room, the state of Oklahoma does require us to have bidding, for example, for building improvements, for construction, even buses, those sorts of things we have to have bidding on, but the state of Oklahoma does not have any laws regarding other large purchases, generally things like copier contracts, insurance, things like that. But what this policy now requires is that any purchase that obligates district anything over $50,000 a year, which is similar to the state, we would have to have some sort of evidence of competitive process. It could be an RFR, it could be an IFR, it could be an RFQ. There are a lot of different processes. But ultimately, since the state does not require that, the district would still have the option, but would still have to document exactly why we didn't do that. All that information will have to come to the board prior to the board making any decision on any of those.
Okay, I do have some, I'm really concerned about this. I've read this several times. This subject matter expert that we put in here is an individual, group of individuals with deep understanding. My take on all this is that we're sending this to each department, and they're going to be basically the ones that bring us these, in there. So we're going to get a one-page document, which means that we're not going to get all the information on all of the stuff, right?
Minimum. I mean, like, for example, we have an RFQ, RFP, I get them confused.
No, I
In the
know.
agenda
Well, we have
right
an RFPQ,
Yeah.
you know, so.
And what it does is, for example, when the board gets the agenda 2 days beforehand, if at any time a board member says, well, it's not enough information, then at any time, we have 2 days, or even right before the board meeting, the staff member could bring more information, or the board could say, well, let's wait another board meeting and so we have more information. The idea is to at least get the board a document that shows what the criteria was and what the rating was before we made the decision. At no point should the board ever make a decision if they don't feel like they have enough information.
Yeah, the one page is just a bare minimum.
Yeah.
I'm still
Could be
concerned in all this that we're somehow taking some power away from the board, and that we shouldn't, when
It
we're
still has
putting
to
it
be
in
approved
departments.
by the board.
I know, I'm just real
You
leery.
just ask. Ask for more info.
Okay,
You always have that right.
all right, I'm not comfortable with this, but if y'all are, you know, I can.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Ms. Clodfelter?
No.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Now we have item, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick explanation of 5E and 5F. 5E is, both of these are required, essentially we're changing the date to comply to the school year ahead of us. 5E is a proposed revision to policy EBA, which is our school hours.
Okay.
So hours and days. It's your turn. Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
And 5F, the same changes, but this is a revision to our policy regarding our school day.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay. Item 5G is a request for proposal under Ms. Ellis, and instead of, as I always seem to do, stealing all her thunder, I'm just going to have Ms. Ellis come up and share her information.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Barbara Ellis, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, soon to be Business Operations. And I have presented for you a summary of the request for proposals and a side-by-side for the two companies that presented RFPs to us as of May 31st. And as a result of that, I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to see the side-by-side and the votes that were cast and tallied. And the recommendation for child nutrition for fiscal year 19 would be Sodexo Operations LLC with a 4-year option of renewal. Do you have any questions?
I don't. Is it my turn?
May I add a little bit of information? This is kind of a sample or a model of what we expect to do in the future. And so,
We'll get the comparisons.
Ms. Coffey,
That's
if you're
really
concerned,
makes it
if,
clear.
for example, we get this on our agenda and in reviewing it, we need more information, this was actually the RFP or RFQ, whichever one it was.
The RFP.
It was actually dictated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture through the Oklahoma State Department of Education. So this rubric was not an option for us. And so we know the standards and everything.
No, but it was
were
very
dictated.
clear.
Yeah.
It was very clear, and I very much appreciate it, but we still have problems remembering what an RFP is, what an RFQ is, what an RFPQ is. Little concerns.
Would you like for me to explain any of them?
Nope, I know what they are, but it's hard for us to keep them straight.
Okay, but we will, because
You'll
those of
label
us,
them as they
those
come
of us who
across.
push them out know what we're asking for, and we'll be able to give you that information.
an
And if you
SMB?
want, the next, because the RFPQ is the pre-qual, the RFQ is the qualifications, the RFP is the proposal, so they would go in that order. Generally, what we're looking at is if there's only one, we may only have to request one. But if there's more than one, we may need to continue to request additional information from those companies that send us qualifications or proposals.
And my thing is, I just always want to make sure that the board is the last line,
Yes.
that they're really, that we're fully aware of what we're doing in our departments, and that we don't never throw anyone under the bus as far as, well, we didn't, as a board, we didn't know that, we didn't understand that, so
Yes.
that's where my
This is
concerns fall
just
into.
a recommendation.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Move for approval?
Second?
Call roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Ellis? Let me scroll down. Item 5H, this is a request for proposal, live streaming for LPS athletic events. And Mr. Gades?
Oh, there you are, Gary. First off, I would like to say that it went up this year, from 45 to 6,000, didn't it?
Yes, it sure did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the sponsorship was $500 more per school.
Wow.
And I guess you have this proposal that I've written up, and it just talks about the process we went through, and we only got one RFP back, and it was from the Oklahoma Sports Network. And like you said, they did up the sponsorship this year. As far as their commitment to us last year, I have a report on that, and I've got the numbers kind of broken up, but for last year, they did 68 sporting events and 34 coaches shows, and it equals up to 102 stream live events they did last year. And of course, you can see my recommendation is that we choose them again and go with them again this year.
I thought they did a fabulous job last year. There were some games and stuff. I don't actually go to the games anymore, so I very much appreciate that you can just choose them on the screen and pick them. If we actually wanted them to do some different things that they didn't do this year, could we do that, like maybe swimming or different?
Well, they actually did some different things
Did they do
this last year. Like
okay.
they did the state basketball playoffs up in Tulsa. They did all that for MacArthur and Eisenhower, the two teams from Eisenhower, and just working with them, I think they would be willing to do anything we ask them to do.
That's what I was interested in, because I know things kind of change, and then, we may go all the way to state with 3 teams this year. Hopefully we do in football and basketball and everything, but, and so they're willing to add that on and take, and do those, right?
There's contract. Right. Mr. Burke is here, I know, and he can talk to that, but they have contracts with OSS, what
We
is
don't at
it?
the moment have a contract, so what I would like the board is authorize Mr. Dees to negotiate some,
Yeah, it'd be a separate negotiation, I'm
because
sure.
we won't have the contract till the July 19th.
But I mean, that's just like a formality, right? I mean, when we pass this RFP, then they basically have it, right?
Right.
And they
Well,
can start,
Unfortunately, we don't have a contract in the agenda.
but isn't that just a formality?
Yeah, but this approves them,
This approves them.
and then you bring us the contract.
Yeah, and then Mr. Dees will have the contract. But this lets them know they can at least start preparing,
Yeah,
you know,
because they've got a lot of work to do.
I doubt we changed, you know, I can't imagine we changing the contract
No, it wouldn't be fair.
below what last year.
No, it wouldn't be fair at all.
We're not going to surprise anybody.
Okay.
But if Mr. Dees wants to, and I understand there's been some other communications, matter of fact, I've got an email where OSN is considering, has offered different sums of money, then I think if Mr. Dees has the opportunity to work those out and prepare them for the contract proposal on July 19th, I'd like the board to give him leeway to do so.
Okay.
That's the good thing about an RFP, because it's a request for, it's a proposal, we have the opportunity to tailor it or negotiate.
Basically means we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to say, I think they do a fantastic job, and I'm very happy that they have the contract again. I mean, if anybody else brought anything, I've been interested to hear that too, but I'm very pleased, so.
So I'd like to make a motion that we give Mr. Dees the leeway to work on a contract.
Second. Call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dees. Under item 5J, we have, every year, it's an open transfer application for 2018-2019, and this is under Mr. Mattingly.
Oh, boy.
Mr. Mattingly.
I was like, I thought I saw him.
I think, usually there's not much discussion.
I think it really is. Michelle has a problem with anybody?
While he's gathering it, again, I may surprise him a little bit. Every year, the board, the district has to approve any open transfers. These are students that are coming into the district from outside districts. We have to approve those. And over the last couple of years, I know Mr. Mattingly has done a tremendous job of making sure they're looking at all sorts of characteristics and qualities of students, attendance, those sorts of things, discipline.
Out-of-district transfers.
Yes, we've been doing a lot of checking on those things. I did look, last year we granted 115 inter-district transfers into the district. This year, there is a
For approval?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
And now, report of the superintendent?
Under my report, I have 4 items, I suppose. The first is consideration action regarding the implementation of salary increase for full-time support personnel for 2018 and 2019 as mandated in House Bill 1026XX. First, of course, it is law, we're having to do it, but what I would like to help the board understand, this law, extremely well-intentioned to give our support staff some funding from the state for the first time, specifically, I think that anybody has ever heard. Unfortunately, the details of the law and the implementation of it, because and specifically this wording in the law that says the dollar amount of salary increase authorized by the subsection shall be prorated based on the number of total hours of work performed by a full-time equivalent support employee. What, as a result, districts around the state are trying to figure out what that means. On one hand, and we're not sure right now if the legislature didn't realize that a full-time support employee in the school district can be 30 hours a week as opposed to the normal 40. So if we prorate this for an employee on the 30 hours, it might be $1.20 an hour raise. If we prorate it for an employee on the 40 hours, which, you know, almost 1,700 hours a year, it might be as little as 94 cents an hour. So, and those numbers could change. Because nobody knows at the moment, and we do not want to have any doubt or ambiguity waiting for our staff, what I recommend is we implement this, and with the board's approval, that we pay it this first year until we get clarity from the legislature and other districts and figure out how to implement this, that we pay this year in 2 equal installments, one in December and one in May. That keeps our staff from having to second guess, because if we jump out, what I don't want to do is jump out, go on the low end of the scale, and we're cheating people some money, but on the other hand, if we go too high on the other end of the scale, we're actually spending more money than intended and could put the district in financial. So this will enable us to determine between now and there, based on somebody's full-time equivalent employment, what the $12.50 should be. It may go up, may go down a little bit, depending on how many hours somebody works. We don't have clarity if they intended for part-time people at this point. Some districts are interpreting it that way. So by doing it in 2 equal payments, it makes it a whole lot easier for our payroll department to figure this out. And when we do it next year, we'll have it implemented within our we may do the same thing, but for right now, for this year, I'd like to recommend that the board allow us to do it in 2 equal payments.
Move for approval.
Second. Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay. It was a busy year for the legislature, and I'm not complaining at all. It's a good problem to have. But item 6B is consideration action regarding implementation of teacher salary increases for 2018 as mandated in HB 1023XX. Again, from the State Department, it says HB 23XX is in effect. This is true regardless of any referendum petition. Fortunately, the Supreme Court last week decided that referendum petition was flawed. They still have some time to put it together, but it really doesn't matter. We as a district have to implement these raises. I thought to do this as soon as possible. That way our staff would have no questions or doubts that Lawton Public Schools is moving forward with it. We'll create the salary scales and get them into our policies as soon as possible. It's basically following what the state mandates. This will be on top of current minimum salaries. And so exactly how the law fills out. Again, it's almost a formality, but I don't want any of our staff to have any doubt that we're implementing these pay raises as soon as possible.
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay. Item 6C, consideration and action regarding audit of the district's current copier contract. I think board members have a handout, kind of looks like this, minus the blue. And for the sake of consistency, if the board will bear with me, I'd like to review where we are at this point. It might take a few minutes, but I will try to be brief, but I don't want to leave anything out. We have a situation here, and I've got a summary sheet, and then I've got some attachments behind it. I'm going to follow my bullet points pretty closely. The first thing is we have a long-standing and very positive relationship with a company called Excel Office Systems and Xerox, and they are currently our providers for not only our print shop but also our building copiers. We've got good, reliable service. We've had no problems, and LPS has legally, openly, and publicly renewed contracts with them for their services several times. Unfortunately, in the recent months, 2 companies, competitors, and also in the copier business, High-Tech Office Systems and Stanley Office Systems have accused LPS and Excel of wrongdoing, initially first demanding that we cancel the contract, and upon advice of our attorneys, 2 attorneys, and investigation, we chose that was not a prudent course. And since that time, the accusation and demands have kind of evolved. And as a result, I've met with the individuals with concerns, both of High-Tech and Stanley representatives, and I've responded twice in written reports. Now, the board has been aware of these because you've received all these emails from these companies as well as I did, and I responded as well. And what I'd like to do real quickly before I go any further is kind of go ahead and review where we are to this point and what I have produced before I go any further on this page. So I'm going to turn to the May 2018 Xerox copier print contract report. And just for your, there are 2 page numberings. The numbering on the bottom page, the little number on the bottom corner was the one I'll refer to if we need to. So I'm on page 2 at the moment. Our first report was in response, and this was after a personal face-to-face meeting in my conference room with representatives of High-Tech and Stanley. It's based on an action that the board took in February 15th of 2008, again, open meeting, completely within the law and our policy to approve a contract with Excel. After I met with these 2 representatives of those 2 companies, we agreed upon these, and I've never had any refutation of this or any contention that these were the priorities that were identified. Our first priority was to determine if the equipment received and contracted was fair price. And then there were some other questions to address the following concerns question: whether or not the board's process was legal, whether we failed to follow state agency rules, and whether we failed to competitively bid this. Another question was addressed an extension of a 3-year contract and whether or not the board had the ability to do that with or without an RFP. Another question was an accusation of exorbitant overpayment and overcharging of the Xerox contract Up to 350% higher was the accusation that we're paying up to 350% higher than the state contract, and on the print shop, and 131% higher for site copiers. As everybody can imagine, once I receive an allegation like that, we're going to investigate it. Address concerns and contracts in Excel as far back as 2013. There were concerns about the print shop, performing work for local nonprofit organizations, and there were other information requested, of which I believe we provided all of it. And the second step of priority that we identified in that meeting was to determine if our needs in print copies are being appropriately met, that we would have a request for information process, invite local vendors and competitors to sit down with us and help us identify what works best. And with the board's permission, I've done a kind of quick review of those, but I'd like to address them one by one, and with that, I'll turn to page 2. Oh, no, page 3. I'm looking at the bottom now. I apologize. So I'm not going to go into any detail, but one of the first questions was raised about the legality of the board's process, whether or not we failed to follow state agency rules, and whether or not we failed to competitively bid. I want to make, of course, the board knows these things. This is partly for the benefit of everybody. Both of our attorneys, we have Attorney Mr. Wade and Attorney Karen Long in Tulsa, have advised us regarding this process. And again, everything happened in an open board meeting. Everything was followed by policy within state law. There are no legal reasons to nullify the contract. That's really the first question and the first hurdle we had to determine. Were there any problems legally? There are no problems legally. There was a piece of language that needed to be in the contract, but its not being in the contract did not nullify state law. State law still trumps it, so that is being addressed by attorneys at the moment. The next question was the extension of multi-year contracts without an RFP or inclusion of local vendors. The board, this is one of those areas, and actually that's why we have a new policy about RFPs, because we did recognize, and I do appreciate the vendors bringing this forward, that, in the last 5 years, we've transitioned to doing RFPs for more and more things. This is one service because of the quality of the service. For other reasons, we decided not to do an RFP, but we in the future will do so. But the simple question is whether that's legal. The board in this area has the full rights to make operational decisions and enter contracts with companies that meet our needs, with or without an RFP process. But again, we now have a policy that ensures that we do have an RFP on any purchases above $50,000. So again, sometimes we're called on something and we have to say, you know what, I think you're right. And in this case, I think both companies were right in saying you should probably do an RFP with this. I do agree, and the board has agreed, obviously, because the board has adopted the policy. One of the next questions was the extension of multi-year contracts without an RFP or inclusion of local vendors. And again, that's what I kind of just addressed. I just read that one, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Okay, we're on page 4. Page 4, the next question that we addressed in this report was the overpayment or overcharging in the Excel contract from 131 to 350% higher. That's a pretty substantial accusation to say that we have been overcharged. As superintendent, I want to know. And as the board, I'm sure, and so we investigated that with the help of our staff. The accusation was that we were paying more than the state bid contract. And let me stop and clarify there. The state bid contract we're referring to is the state of Oklahoma bid, where state agencies like the Department of Transportation, the Department of Education have to actually purchase from this contract. Schools are not bound by that, and neither are vendors. Vendors are not required to do that. Matter of fact, I've got a half dozen contracts from different copier companies. I haven't found one yet that adheres to the state contract, so it's a moot point for schools. We're not required to do so, and vendors are not required to offer that. Nevertheless, the accusation was that we were paying more than the state contract. Well, once we looked into it, as you can see, the state bid price is $7,741.59. The contract price with Excel was coincidentally $7,741.59. It was exactly in line with the state contract. So the accusation of us paying 131% higher on those contracts was wrong. The next one having to do with that was on the large contract, the large print sheet machine. That was the 350%. As you can see, being exactly the same is not 350% overage. The next one was on our contract with our building, and the accusation was that we were paying over the state contract according to our research, which has not been refuted and actually been confirmed by email. that we were overpaying, but it actually turns out that our contract with Excel is very competitive, and we're paying $6,000 less than the state comparison when you go to the state bid contract. So by that measure, first of all, we don't have to follow that measure. By that measure, though, with one example, we're at the state, but on the other example, instead of being 131% over, we're more like 25% under the state bid contract. In addition to that, we were the allegations were we were being overcharged for flashes or clicks. For everybody that is familiar with a copier, anytime you run a piece of paper through the copier, there is either a flash charge or a click charge. The term click charge changed, I suppose, when we went to flashing and digital imaging. And, well, this is exciting stuff, isn't it? So I apologize for wearing you all through, but we've got to get through this. But anyways, we get free flash charges now. And I don't know, for a copier contract, that is an exceptional value. We get over $2.2 million free flash charges each month, and since Excel has taken over the contract in 2016, we have not been charged for a single flash charge over and above that amount. That amounts to about $10,000 a month if you wanted to know what the value of that is to the district. The concerns with the contracts with Excel as far back as 2013, again, I don't have any evidence, neither do our attorneys, that we have any wrongdoing, and so therefore there's nothing to address on there. I have asked companies to bring anything forth if they have any accusations. Concerns about the LPS print shop performing work for local nonprofit organizations. Our LPS print shop has traditionally, as far as anybody can think back, performed print services for local nonprofit charities. Some examples that we have this year are the National Honor Society, the NAACP, and Teen Court. In addition to that, we have other organizations. What is the run that happens in the fall? Spirit of Survival?
PTA.
Yeah, PTA. These are organizations that directly serve our students, so we do extend the service at a price to help them continue serving our students. Yeah.
And as a member of the SOS, we appreciate that service.
Our print shop does a great job.
They do. Awesome job.
And so in summary, this is my first report. There is another one. In summary, at this point, the contract with Excel has proven to be very competitive. Two of the things we've changed. One, we've changed the RFP process. We've changed it by policy. By law, we have to do that now. The other is that as we're going to vote, as we always have, on the contract annually, is something we've always done and will continue to do so. That language in the contract, which was overlooked, will be changed, and that's something our attorney is looking at. Now I'm turning to page 5, and I think that covers that. Over that, that is the first report, which I completed at the beginning of May. Subsequent to that, there were new allegations, which resulted in a second report, and if you turn to page 13, small number at the bottom, there's a copy of that response as well. May 2018 Xerox Copier print contract report. This is report number 2. There was a new round of allegations from both companies against Excel and against LPS. And so I want to review those. On page 11 or page 13, here's the summaries of my findings. I don't go into as much depth on what the actual allegations were. Again, the first thing I said is that it's actually what the board has been working on for about 2 months, is that Lawton Public Schools should have a competitive process. It's a moot point. We have adopted a policy that ensures that happens. Again, that's over and above the state requirements. We're not required to by law, but we agree that's probably a process we need to do. One of the questions is that we are paying more. Our copier contract was still an exorbitant cost, even though we were under the state contract, and even though we were equal to the state contract, and even though we were not being charged 131% or 350% more than the state contract. The next allegation, we're still being overcharged. Well, our site copier contract right now is $154,986, lower per year than it was in 2013 and 14, $473,236 versus $318,250. I don't know, anytime you have a company that has been consistently lowering costs and keeping them stable, that seems to be a good business choice for the district. In addition to that, the new contract reflects no increase to the district, even when the finance charges that are included. One of the contentions was that Excel has included I guess the word predatory might be, finance charges in the contract. Anytime you have, we don't own the equipment, we lease the equipment from either Excel or Xerox, and the accusation is that we are being charged in excess of $61.88 a month, and that accusation is exactly true. Our contract does spell that out. We are paying $6,188 a month in finance charges, but that is happening. Nevertheless, our contract is still $154,000 lower than it was in 2013. So we are still paying, yes, we are paying finance charges, but our contract is still consistently lower by a significant amount. So the value there, again, that was in the contract, fully disclosed, all these issues. The confusion has been whether or not, as we switched over computer equipment, I'll address that in a minute. There's some other issues that we found that Excel has included an additional $18,000 in added monthly value over the current contract, which is over $200,000 a year. For example, they have, and in addition to that, based on these, it just in a sign of good faith, has committed to waive flash charges or continue. That's part of our current agreement. Even though contractually Excel can charge us for flash charges, they have not since 2016. Their commitment is to keep doing so, keep not doing so. And in comparison to other contracts, even one of the vendors at question, they are charging for flash charges. It's so, all the contracts that I've seen, I've received contracts from several districts at this point. I have not seen very many districts, I can't think of any, where the vendor is not charging flash charges. That is a tremendous value for the district. So again, real quickly, I'm going to go through the claims. I know it doesn't feel quickly, but I'm really trying to do it as quickly as I can. The first claim is Excel has hidden finance charges that are exorbitant, questionable, and ongoing. It's not hidden because our contract spells it out, and Excel has never denied those costs. They are charges of $61.88 per month. And even with those finance charges, by getting the new equipment, it has enabled us to have new equipment and to keep our prices lower over time. I think that's, for me, that's a relatively good business decision. In addition to that, I want to break down the $18,000 in extra values that Excel has included, $10,000 monthly in flash charges. This is based on our actual charges that we were receiving from 2013 to 2016. This is not phantom money. This is not made-up money. This is money that Excel could be charging us every month but chooses not to do so. $6,000 in monthly staples provided for free. Our new machines have staples, and Excel has agreed to provide staples. I don't know if anybody else has a computer contract with staples. I verified the prices. I compared on Google just to see what they would be on Amazon. And of course, that is in line with the costs that we could expect to pay for. Now we're up to $16,000. Now I'm turning to page 14. In addition to this, we've added additional 9 machines to our contract without any increase in cost. That's a $1,300 value. We have a full-time technician. And pending approval, we do expect to see an approximate $1,500 per month reduction in flash charges in our print shop. But Excel has committed to investigate that with Xerox. That is ultimately Xerox's choice. The other claim is the cost of the Excel contract is exorbitant. The last comparison we had, one of the vendors that is of concern, Excel Office Systems bid was actually $112,000 less than the nearest competitor, or next to one of the competitors that is having a concern. The flash charges, again, being waived at $10,000 a month, and all those other issues are very substantial. We were able to obtain a contract for one of these companies. Actually, I've obtained a contract for both of these companies, one with a city entity and one with a school district. And I do believe both of their contracts, they do charge flash charges. So as an industry standard, it seems like, I don't know what's going on here, but again, it's not normal for a company to not charge us for flash charges. It's a significant, matter of fact, and again, it's right here, the City of Lawton account, you know, their $531.88 monthly contract, that's the base contract, and they're charged an additional $2,200 a month, which is a 40% increase. I'm thankful we don't have that increase so we can budget. There's some contractual languages that we've addressed. It was accused that we were being overcharged for finishing components, actually that we were not getting staplers, hole punches, etc. We ran this off on the copier in my office that has a stapler and a hole punch. So we've received the new equipment. It has exactly that we were promised. All of those components are actually in the equipment, and we never had any doubt it would be there. So far, again, these accusations have proved something that were easily dismissed. Claims that Excel's not a local vendor. Again, I know, for example, High Tech is local. No doubt about that. Stanley Office Systems has an office down the street on 11th Street, Fort Sill Boulevard, and so does Excel. So how we decide that. A strange accusation that our LPS has phone lines connected to our copiers, which is an external expense. About 3 years ago, we went to VoIP. We don't have phone lines connected to our copiers. We may have a handful somewhere, but I'm not sure. I don't think we do. There might be 3 or 4. And regarding these contracts, I've discovered that lease contracts for copier companies are fairly uniform, and I'll explain later how I have obtained that. But for example, both High Tech and Excel, the competitors at odds here, both use the same leasing company, and the contracts are similar. One thing I did ask of Stanley Office System and High Tech is to provide me a list of school districts that they serve, so we could obtain a copy of their contracts, so we could have because I don't know what other copier companies do. It's a very closed system. It's a closed business. But again, both companies have declined to offer us any comparisons of what their contracts look like for other school districts. And for concern for what competitors will do with their contracts. And that's just the reality of what happened. In summary, we do have a competitive process and purchase for large purchases. Our current contract is $154,000 less than it was in 2013 and 14. We have more machines, we have more services, better machines that staple everything else. The Excel contract does include $61.88 in finance charges, but it also is offset by $18,000 in real value that we can document. Excel has submitted a written commitment to me or to the district to continue waiving flash charges at our current rate. And so at this point, there's no compelling reason for LPS to cancel this contract. Both of our attorneys agreed without due cause, without reason. And again, we've opened ourselves up and asked for evidence to be brought forth as to why these contracts are not beneficial to the district, why they've violated policy, or why they violated state law, and none of those things have been evident to this point. And a further gesture of good faith from Excel, even though our contract is already, as I said, 25% below the state contract price, Excel has agreed to remove that $61.88 beginning in November, which is when the contract would have rolled over. That's a considerable savings of over $2,000, I can't remember the exact amount of money, flash charges, $61.88 a month, $6,188 a month. Yes. They can continue to waive flash charges and offer free staples, and they're going to investigate those other things. So the conclusion on that, on the second report, and you may breathe a sigh of relief that we're done with that, is that everything that we've been able to establish as a district, our staff and everything we've been able to verify using different data points is that we've got a very good competitive deal with Excel Office Systems. Nevertheless, if we go to item 4 on the front page, we're back to page 1. In addition to this, we've complied with all record requests from both parties. Matter of fact, in Ms. Cordes' office, there's a 3,000-page stack of documents that we have had requested from Stanley Office Systems. We reply. We're an open book. Anything we have is an open record. We comply as quickly as we possibly can. Being that large number of papers, it's taken us a little time, however. The summary of findings so far from these reports, just one more review, not to beat a horse to death, is no wrongdoing, no illegal activity discovered. So far, we have no reason for LPS not to honor this contract. It's legal for any legal reason, for any business reason, or for any reason of quality of service. We've adopted a new policy requiring RFPs. Our contract costs have continued to decrease under Excel. It's irrefutable. Compared with other sources, our contract is competitive, compared not only with other copier company contracts, but also with the contracts that we've been able to obtain from Stanley and Excel. I mean, that should read High Tech, I apologize. Also compared with the state contract prices, we're actually at or below the state contract prices, sometimes significantly. Excel does provide many advantages: free staples, no flash or click charges, and a history of impeccable service. They have made several concessions as a sign of good faith, which is the removal of the finance charges, annualization of the flash charges on the commercial printers, and contract language changes, which we're very appreciative. Item 7, unfortunately, nothing that we have provided or responded to at this point has satisfied Stanley Systems or High Tech. We've provided this is the information we provided, but still there are accusations that the LPS or Excel has done something inappropriate. We've had no information that's brought to us that has changed any of this, and at this point, the frustration, the dilemma that we have is I feel like Lawton Public Schools is caught between almost a vendor feud. We have two companies accusing one company of wrongdoing, and now we've gotten so far deep into the Copier weeds, we're talking about proprietary information. If you all are, hearing about this, you all are sensing the Copier weeds at the moment. It's hard for us at this point. Matter of fact, there was at one point an argument on whether or not the term click or flash was the appropriate. I'm not a Copier insider, I don't know. We have differing industry definitions and practices. We have difficulty in comparing industry standards, proprietary systems. How do you know if a Minolta or a Sharp or a Xerox copier is comparable? Those are issues we can't decide. Ultimately, we have to pick what works for us. We've had difficulty in comparing other contracts. Again, we've had neither company wants to provide us with any contracts. So the question that I'm dealt with and the board has been dealing with for several months now is, who do we trust? A longtime vendor that we've had good service with, or competitors who are making accusations against them and us? In order to be fair, in order to make sure that LPS has done its due diligence, though, I do recommend on item number 9 that we have an independent audit of our Copier contracts. At this point, honestly, I can't tell anymore. I've reached my ability to objectively look at this, and if I can't sift the difference between a click charge and flash charge, I'm at the end of my rope. But the questions now we're getting are so insider and so Copier industry related, there's no possible way for us. So I've contacted our independent auditor in order to do they're prepared, I believe, to do an independent audit of our Copier contracts with the board's approval. But there's one more element that I'd like the board to be aware that I'm requesting as well, and that's under item A, 9A. Because it's been so difficult to get a clear picture of other Copier contracts, contacted the United Suburban School Association. We're a member of that. I've also contacted COSA, which is the Administrators Association, and the Oklahoma State School Board Association. We put out a call earlier this week to over 500 school districts for them to send me a copy of their Copier contract. And so I've already received several Copier contracts. That way we, in part of this study, will not only be able to look at what LPS's Copier contract is it a good deal is the base question. Is it fair? Is it competitive? Everything that we've looked at this point says it's a darn good deal for LPS. But again, I can't tell anymore. I can't answer the questions I'm being asked. They're too specific to the Copier industry. But the biggest question outside of that nobody can answer is, what do other district Copier contracts look like? So the incentive for other districts, if other districts in the state will send LPS their Copier contract, we're going to chart them out, make sure the the auditor has access to them, and in the end, we'll finally have a statewide picture of what are districts paying for flash charges. Is anybody else getting free staples? Is anybody else getting free flash charge? That might be something that's so ubiquitous, it's everywhere. What are the costs? My initial impressions from looking at the handful of contracts that I've received is, so far I believe our findings are correct. But I think having an independent auditor with the statewide perspective is probably the best course for us at the moment. So unless the board has any questions, I'd like to recommend that we proceed.
Move for approval. Second. Call the roll.
Who made the second? Patty. Okay. Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
I am disappointed nobody wanted me to repeat that.
No.
Not even a little.
I never cared to know, and I don't know.
Oh, my. Thank
have
you, that was my thought.
Not taking it personally. Superintendent's announcements, okay, some good news. I have a few announcements here. As everybody knows, we had a primary the other night, Tuesday. And I would like to say congratulations to LPS educators, Joan Gableman and Jacoby Crowley, who have both won their primaries and will be in either the House 63 or the Senate 32 races coming up. So I'd like to, I'm really proud of them.
Brave people.
They jumped in, they are brave.
There's a lot of brave people when you look at that list.
That's impressive. The other piece of good news just fell on the floor. I'd like to recognize GEO Group Foundation, and GEO is, of course, the correctional facility. They have donated to Lawton Public Schools $6,000 from their foundation to be used for scholarships. Unfortunately, we received it on May 23rd, which made it impossible to use this year, but we've deposited that money. I want to show my thanks, appreciation for that contribution. We will engage our schools and our counselors and determine how to allocate that money and under what, and we'll probably engage GEO to see what kind of focus they would like to have, but I would like to show my appreciation for them. A lot of progress on our construction projects, HVAC at Adams, roofing at Tomlinson Middle School, and the MacArthur Highlanders cafeteria remodel, and then finally, several of our schools raised money for the Leukemia Society. John Adams, MacArthur High School, MacArthur Middle School, Sullivan Village, and Washington all raised money, over $4,000 for Leukemia Society, and I wanted to honor them and appreciate their efforts. Oh, that's all the news I have. If the board doesn't have any questions.
No. Okay, I would like to have something removed from the consent agenda. 7F2A3. Anybody else?
Nope. Yes, I did.
Okay. 7F2A10. Talked about.
So,
All right.
Kathy, 7F2A3 and 7F2A10.
All right, then we want to make a
I'd like to move for the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
okay.
Well, you get there, let us know.
She's still thinking about copiers.
My mind is
She's on its own.
I don't know where to go. Well, I'm on something now that I can't get off of. I'm in one thing.
Cindy,
Whoops,
Yeah, I just want to bring that up.
I can't get down there. Oh, there I am. There I am.
she wants to.
No, me. He knows.
Oh, I'm just.
Yeah. You won't be a second.
Okay.
Okay. So we're pulling, did you get what we're
Yeah,
pulling?
I got the two
Okay.
we're pulling.
Okay.
And Patty
And
made
I
the
moved for
motion.
the balance.
Right.
I second.
Okay.
And call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Ms. Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Lori? Or I can?
I don't care. On the 7F2A10, I would just like to ask Mr. Dees if you could please get further information on that for me. And then if you could bring it back to the next meeting, then we can vote on it at that time. So no action
So
on
no
that.
action. Okay, and on mine, on the 7F2A3, I just, we vote on this a lot, and we never really talk about it, and I just wanted to know if somebody could tell us what our benefits are from this.
All right, Cindy Elkins, I'm going to refer that to, with your permission, Dr. Polk, and she may pull one of her staff members out. Teresa Donahue? Yes, Teresa Donahue. So it's been passed to you, Ms. Donahue. And for everybody, Ms. Donahue is our Director of Federal Program, of Title I in Federal Programs.
Well, my question, Ms. Donahue, thank you for coming up in front of us. We just kind of have a tendency to go through things and we just pass things, you know, and we never really ask the questions, you know, like what benefits are we getting from some of these? So I've kind of started trying to pull some of these and talk about them a little bit, so.
Okay,
That's why we
that's
picked
great.
this one.
Let me give you just a little background. Cindy Elkins is a consultant, of course, that is hired by our Title I sites, funded with Title I funds. And anything that a Title I school spends their funds on is assessed each year. As far as in a needs assessment, the school looks at their test scores and parent surveys, teacher input, and they determine what their school-wide needs are. And then they determine how are they going to meet those needs. And these sites have determined that using Cindy Elkins as a consultant, she comes in and works with the teachers to help increase the students' test scores. You know, she's improving their teaching, which in turn helps the students. So.
Okay, so do we have like a comparison, do we have like a study that says how is this helping, is this beneficial, are we gaining
Yes,
from it?
Cindy Elkins provides us that to the school each year, because
Okay.
that's part of the needs assessment. They would not keep rehiring her and spending the funds if they were not seeing the results that they were wanting to
Test scores
see.
going up.
Okay.
Yes, test scores going up.
And that's, so we are seeing that every level?
Yes.
Okay, and that's just a question. I do trust explicitly what y'all do, but it's always nice to have that clarification.
Thank you. Good questions.
I'll move for approval.
Oh, Ms. Donahue.
Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
And Dr. Bridges?
Yes. Okay, all right, so now we are down to, all right, so we're going to go into executive session.
We do
Okay.
have a need for executive session.
Move
Okay.
for executive session. Second.
Okay.
Your mouse is slow.
There's my-
No, I was typing, I'm sorry.
Get her a faster mouse.
There are no click charges on her mouse.
No click charges.
Gotta get there.
I got an idea for the geo money. The geo money. You know, trying to do a leadership institute. I wonder if they do this.
Who made the motion?
It's our discretion.
Patty. Second.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth? Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Do you want to do it real quickly for a second before I come in?
I was wondering if you could come in first and then we.
think it might be connected.
Okay. All right, now, I don't know the wording that I'm supposed to say. Do I just,
She'll bring you, don't you have her statement?
Ms. Clodfelter, Ms.
She'll give you a
Nyworth.
statement. Here,
It needs to give you something to read.
here,
she's coming with your statement of executive session.
I was like, look, there's
We
something.
weren't gonna give you one, we thought maybe you could just
I
make
could
it
just
up.
wing it. All right,
That would be mean.
okay. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay, the Board of Education went into executive session at 6 PM. Members present were Carla Clodfelter, Vice President, Acting President, Patty Nyworth, and Dr. Lori Bridges. Others present was Superintendent Tom Deegan. Items discussed included the employing, promoting, or receiving resignation of individual certified and support salary personnel transaction as listed on the certified and support personnel reports, the selection of an elementary principal, the selection of a high school assistant principal 12-month, the selection of individuals to serve in board appointed positions for the 2018-2019 school year, and the employment and resignation of Diane Brandstetter. During the executive session, the board discussed these items and no other items, and no action was taken. The board returned to open session at 6:45 PM. This constitutes the minutes of the executive session.
Under item 12, Superintendent's Personnel Report.
Do we need to tell who the elementary principal and stuff was that we appointed?
I'm going to get to that in a minute.
You're going to get that minute? Okay. I just make sure. Okay.
Under item 12A, I have the approval of certified and support personnel reports.
Move for approval.
No. Okay.
Patty moves for approval.
I'll second.
Call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Under item 12B, we have the approval of the selection of elementary principal, and for this position, I recommend Miss Ella Pamela Snavely.
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Call C?
Under 12C, I have the approval of selection of high school assistant principal. This is a 12-month position, and for this, I recommend
High school or middle school?
middle
It's
school.
middle school.
It says
That's
high
where,
school.
it says high school.
Yeah,
and
that's what
it is.
Oh,
It's middle.
this is actually a middle school assistant principal.
What did it say above?
It said high school, and that was where my confusion had come in earlier.
Okay, but it is middle school.
It's middle school.
And if we need to redo that, we
The
can
agenda's-
redo it
You can
July
ask.
19th. We'll determine.
ask them,
if-
yeah.
We'll determine
Wait,
if we
it's
need to
middle
re-vote on this.
It's middle school.
It's middle school. It's wrong on the agenda.
We're
so-
not selecting the high school principal, we're selecting a middle school.
So do we need to
Well, let's
revisit
go ahead and
that?
vote, and then if we have to,
We'll find out.
if it doesn't, we can ask Chuck. Chuck, what do you think?
Chuck?
Do we have to redo
The
it?
agenda says high school.
I think it's a personnel appointment, assignment. I don't think that, I mean, I think we can go ahead and act on it. And first, I can't imagine anyone raising an objection to it.
Okay.
But I think let's go ahead and act upon it.
Okay.
And if there is someone that objects to it, under the statute, they have 10 days to raise the question. I don't anticipate any problem.
And
Okay,
we'll-
all right.
Just to be safe, we'll go ahead and put it in the personnel report next time as well on July 19th.
So you want to tell who it is?
Okay.
Oh, yes, Miss Patricia Campbell.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Under item 12B is approval of selection of individuals serving board-appointed positions. I want to make sure the board understands we're working off an updated copy that is at the board's table.
Move for approval. Second.
Call the roll?
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
And under item 12E, I recommend no action.
Any new business? Okay. New business?
Actually, since it's a special meeting, we can't have new business.
Oh, there you go.
We followed the regular business format.
Okay, well, okay, good.
We'll never
So, do we,
Next regular meeting.
is set for Thursday, July 19th, 2018, unless we're needing a special board meeting before then?
We do have one
And we do
scheduled for
have one
July
scheduled.
10th.
Yes.
July 10th, yeah.
So July 10th at 5 o'clock, we do have a
Here,
special board
we're
meeting
going.
set. Do we have any board announcements? Y'all can feel bad for me, I do. My son's leaving to go to Canada on Saturday to be the production manager at the Goodyear plant in Napanee. It's a good thing and a bad thing, but y'all can keep me in your thoughts. Along with Denise's son who went to West Point. So, a good thing and a sad thing. All right, now we have a recess.
So we're just going to recess, Madam President?
Yes. Call recess. Then, what happens now? I don't know what we do
You
now.
probably can sign some contracts while they redo the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
For everybody in the audience, they're going to
Set the
reorganize the room.
Room?
And I can start signing contracts?
Yep.
Do we have to make a motion or anything?